Yeah. I think marriage is legalized slavery.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Say more, because if I'm thinking about slavery and I'm thinking about marriage, there are two different images that come into my
Absolutely
head.
not. I don't think I don't know how you don't. A man is if especially if he expecting you to be a trad wife, he might as well pull out a whip and a chain.
Wow. So there are young people watching who might be wanting to get married. What would you say to them?
Don't.
Don't get married.
No.
Okay.
Oh God, you are crazy.
How am I crazy?
You are crazy.
You're saying that marriage is a...
No, I don't believe in the marriage. No, I don't.
So you wouldn't get married?
No, and I don't think it's beneficial for a woman at all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's your host, Malik Washington. How's everyone doing this fine day or evening, wherever you all reside? I hope that everything is going well with each and every one of you, and that whatever trials and tribulations you're going through, that you can get through through them with strength, courage, and determination. And for those of you who are having a wonderful time and a good time, I wish you more good times and good fortune as your life goes on. But I want to dive right on into the topic. As you may have seen, I introduced a video to you all in the beginning of this video regarding the comedian, and I believe she is an actress to a certain degree too. I think she's been on a few movies. You all know her. Her name is Leslie Jones. And if you don't, the only little tidbit of information I have on her is that she's a comedian. And she was recently on this show with this young lady, basically having a conversation. It was kind of short term though. A conversation surrounding how she viewed marriage. And of course, she had this very extreme sentiment that she deemed marriage to be a form of legalized slavery, and that she felt that this was not you could say, a institution that should be pursued by women, especially younger women, because there are women out here who do want to be married, who long to be married, or they're seeking marriage, right? Particularly with the right person, of course. But we all don't always get the good deck, if that makes any sense, right? We sometimes get people who aren't exactly who we thought they were going to be, or they turned out to not be who we expected them to be, right? And so to her, she feels like marriage is this institution of, I guess, a form of, in a rhetorical sense, not in the literal sense. Rhetorically, it's like legalized slavery. And she doesn't see how anyone does it, right? Even though she herself has never been married. She hasn't been in I don't even think in any kind of like relationship at all. But I could be wrong on that. But that's not the point of contention here. The point is to say that she has a perspective and she's not within that particular framework, and yet is giving this very extreme example of why she feels this way, right? However, she perhaps has reserved this opinion from viewing it from the lens of having observed it on the outside looking in. So maybe she has friends or family members, or even she knows marital couples who aren't necessarily happy or feel burdened by their relationship, or there's a mismatch somewhere, right? The broader question is, though, because she said this, it's brought out some, you could say, a split in people's perspective on how people view marriage, right? Because there's people out here who have viewed, or who have very strong views of marriage on opposite ends of the spectrum. And there are people who have not been married at all, and they have very strong views on opposite ends of the spectrum. The question is, and it's within the framework of how she actually labeled it, or she referenced it when she talked about it, is marriage legal? Is marriage slavery? It's a very strong, I would say, statement to make, but I'm proposing it as a question. So how do I view it, right? Well, me personally, I intend to be married one day, hopefully. If it's in Yah's plans, I hope that to be the case. If not, I accept myself not being married. Although I am currently in a relationship, but I'm not married yet, right? But the thing is, marriage is a very strong state or condition to be in. It's a contract of matrimony that's supposed to be between two individuals who finally want to come together in unison and have this, you could say, lifelong commitment to each other. Now, all marriages are not the same. You have a lot of different marriages: levirate marriages, natural law marriages, marriage obviously under the state. There is also arranged marriages by the parents for their children, which used to be a very ancient school way of doing things. I don't know if that really happens that often now. It's probably very few and far in between. Maybe if you're probably somewhere in the Middle East, somewhere where those types of dynamics are still strong and prevalent in those environments, that might be a thing for them. But you have these different forms of marriages. Not all marriages are the same. Not all marriages hold the same values. Not all people commit and guarantee the same things within a marriage, right? You have to take these things with a grain of salt because they are all different. However, nothing about a marriage is necessarily slavery, right? In and of itself. And the reason why it's not slavery, because by definition, marriage doesn't meet those conditions, right? You have to be stripped away of your power. You have to be stripped away of your autonomy. You have to be stripped away of your ability to freely do whatever it is you choose to do. Everything is kind of taken away from you, and you're treated purely as an object, or you're treated purely as something that has a purpose to be used, and you'll be used to the fullest to the end of your days, right? So basically like an instrument, but in a negative aspect, because you're owned by this person. This person literally bought your freedom, bought your ability, your inability to be able to do and make executive decisions as it pertains to your life. Everything pretty much in and revolves around said slave master or said person that owns you, correct? So crazy how human beings can be property, but slavery, the institution thereof, has been practiced for thousands of years. Marriage has been practiced for thousands of years. The problem is marriage, even if you're legally binded to a man by contract of matrimony, is not a form of slavery unless you feel mentally in your mind that you're incapacitated in some way because of it, right? The condition itself is not slavery. It's the behaviors within that cultural framework of marriage that is making you feel burdened. So here's what I know. Statistically speaking, it is reported that I want to say over 60% of divorces are initiated by the women. They're initiated by the women. And why they're initiated by the women, first, isn't because of what Leslie Jones mentioned. In fact, it's because of financial issues, financial concerns. Second to that would be what she is referring to, and that is this overwhelming exhaustion or burden that women tend to feel. Some women, not all, some women tend to feel in their marriages, which is that there is this unequal distribution of labor, right? So a lot of the times in these, maybe perhaps traditional, if you're into these traditional marriage aspects or dynamics, as we all know, men are typically the ones that go out, they work, they upkeep the home, they pay all the bills, yada, yada, yada. They do that. The women are supposed to be the domestic types. This is the way it had been since the Victorian era. They stayed at home. They basically, they were pregnant, barefooted, that sort of thing. They were also, housekeepers, things of that nature. They ultimately took care of everything within that framework. The problem that you have in this instance is man comes home exhausted, probably doesn't want to damn near do anything else once he comes home, depending on the type of job he does. But let's assume that this man is like a construction worker, or maybe he's some sort of tradesman, but it's laborious and, physically, it's manual labor. The woman is basically at home. She's taking care of the children. She's also taking care of herself. She's also taking care of the house. There is the possibility, and especially in the modern times, where the woman is working, right? So she may be working a corporate job, which a lot of women do. They either work corporate or they're doing education, somewhere along those lines. But there's this amalgamation of all of these different factors that are contributing to this woman being in the disposition that she's in to do child care, taking care of herself. In addition, she's also taking care of her husband, because also part of being a wife is you do have to tend to your husband's needs, right? Sexually, physically, maybe emotionally. That's not often required for men, as men tend to be very introspective. They keep things kind of within themselves, and then they don't want to appear weak in front of women, right? In front of their wives. But nonetheless, this woman who feels this way, or the one which would be some of you guys out there that might be listening to this video, she's proactively doing things to try to make sure the household is kept up, right? Or making sure that her child is in good health, making sure that you are well fed or that you feel well kept, things of that nature. The problem is that sometimes it gets overwhelming, right? You could say a domestic wife is almost like an executive assistant. She's proactively trying to make sure everything is together, it's scheduled correctly, food is made, all these different things. If she's well equipped to do all of this, her job can be overwhelming. It could be a lot of responsibilities. And so they feel that because at times when they have these things and the man isn't proactively tending to her needs, proactively tending to the child's needs, like a very rudimentary example, if a child has daily checkups with the doctor, she can't necessarily make it because maybe she has to work some projects at the job she can't cancel, and she may need the husband to do something for her, but he doesn't proceed to do it, or he is unwilling to do it because he seems disinterested, doesn't want to do it, or he primarily puts it off on her like it's her responsibility. Now she has to make an executive decision that she felt her husband would help her to make, and she has to change it, or she has to forcefully leave her job so that she can actually care for her child. She has to make sacrifices. So, that being said, when you have situations like that, there is this reality to women that it feels like slavery. It feels like they're mules in the relationship. And this is very specific to that type of marriage. That's not to say all marriages are like that. Let's get that straight. Obviously, they're not. There are some marriages out here that are healthy. But what I want to clarify in instances like this, right? All marriages come with some degree of burden. There is not a marriage out here I know that doesn't have some kind of burden to it. It's your attitude towards it, for one. The second thing is how you communicate how that burden makes you feel over time as you're in this relationship. Now, for the most part, men can stick the landing when it comes to burden. For a perfect example, if a man has to pay bills, on average, a traditional or a hardworking man will pay the bills. That's not a problem, right? If a man has to take care of their child, which I would dare say it shouldn't be just the responsibility of the woman personally to care for children. Children need to be cared for and developed by both parents, regardless, right? Regardless of traditional or 50-50 or however you all have your dynamics at home with your husbands and wives. But that child is yours. I would surmise that if you are a good and attentive father, there will be things you're going to do. Even if the wife is doing it primarily, you will chip in if you have to, right? Most men will. That's not an issue. I know for me, okay, sure. If I have a wife, we have children, I know that these children have daily checkups. I know that these children have to go to games. I know that these children need a lot of attention, all these different things. I'm going to make the necessary sacrifices for my children, not for her sake, but for for my sake and for theirs, because those are my babies as much as they are hers personally, right? Of course, we can't always be there because by virtue of the man's position, he has to work too. It's not just her. He's working laborious jobs. He's not guaranteed to get time off to come take care of these children. Neither is she. So sometimes decisions have to be made that are not liked, but these things do happen. But compromise is a thing. Conversation is a thing. And before people get into marriages, I always feel we should have conversations prior to getting married. That means we're going to have the uncomfortable conversations. We're going to have the tough ones. We're going to have the easy ones, the more delicate conversations. Everything, especially with childcare, because those things are very imperative. If you know that this traditional dynamic is not going to work for you, ladies, don't do it. If you know that there's the possibility that this man might not do everything that you need him to do, ladies, vet that before you actually do it. My thing is prevention before acting upon it, right? Being pragmatic, being proactive, because this is a big thing for women with proactivity, right? You want to anticipate things. Anticipate that with a man, there's going to be things about him that are imperfect. You need to be able to, I want to say, examine and suss out those imperfections that man might have. Now, I do also understand this. Some relationships are deceptive. In other words, they might have had the conversation. Maybe the intentions were thrown out there, right? Y'all might have talked about every single thing. And you might have told that man exactly what you wanted. He told you exactly what he wanted. But guess what? They don't follow through. They have this, either there's this executive dysfunction, meaning that there is motivation. The problem is that they just don't execute properly. Their execution style is either too late, or you have to tell them to do it, or not at all. The other component is that they also don't want to commit to it because they're simply obfuscating from their responsibilities. So they don't want to do it at all. So that means they deceived you and they had other intentions, right? That being stated, I understand that part where, okay, I had the conversation, but then what am I to do about a person who simply doesn't want to cooperate or doesn't want to corroborate on anything that's happening? Well, in that case, I would say maybe there needs to be counseling, of course, because you can't force someone to be what you want them to be. You can only have the conversation, hope they're willing to execute. If they don't, and divorcement is a final option, then I guess you have no choice, right? Which can become an unhappy situation. And the truth of the matter is that marriage in general is just not an easy feat. And I think a lot of people romanticize the idea of marriage because they want the world to see that they've leveled up. They finally found someone of significance. This is someone that they could actually work with. They may want to do a lot of things with. And in fact, you may want to be traditional. However, the person doesn't necessarily seem to have the soul to want to ease the burden, help you alleviate some of the burden that you're feeling, right? And that, I think, is the crux of the issue, is that despite the communication, despite the fact that they see it, they're not willing to offer it. And I think that bothers some women, that some of these men who are in these relationships notice these burdens and they're not willing to unease it. But here's what I also want to say too. Let's say you do get a man that does exactly what you want. what now becomes of your burden? Does it now just exclusively become his, where he now adds on, where you now add to his burden? Because that's something to consider. And there are instances where some people will try to unease the burden of their significant other, their spouse. And what will happen is that spouse will no longer do the job. I mean, you know why? Because they handed it off slowly but surely to the partner that was willing to actually make the necessary sacrifices to take care of the children, take care of the wife, do things with the house, whatever it takes, because they want to please their significant other. So now it becomes a point to where the person might be getting used because you tried to help them because they claimed that they felt stressed out and they felt burdened and out of place and all these different things. They didn't feel loved. They feel like you didn't care. So you're using all of this very, I guess you could say, divided language when you're trying to tell somebody the marriage isn't working out well, but they're doing everything you asked them. And now you're getting lazy and you're just sitting back relaxing. Oh, he's a perfect husband now because now he's doing everything and I don't have to do it at all. See, that's not how that works. That wouldn't work with me, because then at that point, if I suspect that the reason why you don't want to do this is because you just simply got lazy and now you want to hand it off to me, I think that's a problem, because marriage is about compromise. It is about, to a certain degree, assigning yourself things that we all already naturally do before we get into a marriage. Because guess what? Before you're married, you have to cook for yourself. If you're not cooking and you don't know how to cook, you go and obviously buy yourself food or do takeout, as most people do in the modern age. You already cook. You already have to clean yourself, unless you're just a lazy ass that just doesn't want to obviously clean up your own room. Right? You have to go to work because you have to survive. You have to make money. We all do all of these different things already. So we all already have natural burdens. It just gets multiplied because when you're in a relationship, now it's two people instead of one. But said second person should have also have been experienced enough to understand this is already something that you do. But what you're doing in this case as a married couple is you're meshing together and you're working to help one another kind of alleviate each other of some of these burdens when you can't necessarily do it due to an excess of one factor in your life being more active than the other. So in other words, if all I'm doing is going to work 8 hours or 12 hours in a day, I would expect that when I come home, I would come home to a clean house, a healthy child that has been well fed, well taken care of, went to school, all those different things. I would expect these things to happen because, again, if I'm also paying bills and I'm the protector and I'm this and I'm that, I would expect on your end that there's things that you have accomplished as well on an everyday basis. Because guess who doesn't get an excuse or leeway if they don't do their job, if they don't go to work, if they don't pay bills, if they don't clean, if they don't cook, if they don't take care of themselves good enough health-wise? Moi. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter about necessarily, oh, well, I feel burdened, therefore take mines. But I also have to take into consideration, I can't just negate mines in order to feed your burdens as well. I can help alleviate it from time to time. And that's part of life, because there's a lot of things I have to compromise on, especially when it comes to you or if it comes to my child. And I feel like in this instance, taking this, you could say this framework, and then applying it to an institution that is very extreme, you're not obligated to be you're not obligated to be with this person, especially if you're feeling abused or if it feels like actually feels like oppressive, like slavery. You're not obligated to it, but there are conditions to maintaining it and conditions to meeting a divorce. And the bottom line is that if you can make it work, try to make it work. I don't think slavery is necessarily going to give you the option to make it work. You're either going to do it or you don't. And that's your life, right? Because you're an object. You do as I say, and that's final. Otherwise, it's off with your head and you're a useless piece of shit. You're trash. You're nothing. But in a marriage, you can say no. In a marriage, you can have a conversation. In a marriage, you can make sacrifices. In a marriage, you can petition to make things work. You can't do that in slavery. But the problem is a lot of people today, and I'm going to end on this note. And this is the truth. A lot of people are just horrible people. And a lot of people are not good with relationships. And a lot of people don't know how to love unconditionally. When shit gets tough, when times are hard, when burdens come naturally and you have to go through the test of time to try to deal with them and mitigate it, because it is the human experience to go through the worst of the worst before it gets better. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, that sort of thing. You can't have a solid relationship without there being some sort of rigidity or even a rockiness to how things may go. And I'm not talking about artificial burdens. I'm talking about actual natural circumstances that put you in a position to where you have to make executive decisions. You have to make calculated risk, right? And they may or may not go well. You may have to do things that might put your family in situations they may not want to be in, but in order to get to the other side, we have to tread through those waters. Burden is a part of the journey of being married to someone that you're going to have a lifelong commitment to. You expect to go through your entire marriage, nothing wrong. You expect to go through your entire marriage, no arguments. You expect to go through your entire marriage, no financial concerns. You expect to go through your entire marriage thinking that your husband is going to look handsome every single day, or that your wife is going to be beautiful every single day. But that depends on how you look at her. That depends on if you don't lose interest or don't lose curiosity. Many people do. Or they settle for someone they truly don't love. But in the moment, they find them useful. They find them necessary for their short-term gratification, not for the long term. And the bottom line is, I'm not saying it's not simple and it's not as black and white when it comes to divorce. It's very broad. There are so many reasons why a person divorces somebody. But since we're specifically talking about this issue of unequal distribution of labor, again, for marriages that are already done, I can't speak to that anymore. It's done, right? You all have made your decisions. You're happy as singles. You're happy that you're divorced. You might find it unfortunate, of course, because this was a person you might have loved, but it just didn't work out. But the truth of the matter is, we're all at fault to some degree for why our marriages fail. And the bottom line is, for those of you out there who are not married, you want to be married one day, but you're scared because the times we're living in, it's different. These people are not marriage material, and I can speak to that, right? They're not marriage material, and they're selfish as hell to the point to where they want to be selfish in the marriage. Be intentional with where you want to go with your life and how you want to be married. Be intentional with what you desire and be strong in that, both you young men and women, right? If you truly want marriage, then stick with it. And if you want to be under God, then seek God in those men and women. Don't just sit there. And this is the other thing. If somebody tells you they believe in Jesus, do studies with them. See how deep they can go into topics. See how much they truly know about the scriptures. See how much do you actually know about the scriptures. It's easy for a person to sit there and say that they love God and they love Jesus. Millions of us have said it. Millions of us men have said it just to get in the draws of women who we thought were pretty that go to church. That is too damn easy. That's damn near, that's a breeze. The fact of the matter is that a spiritual man is known by his fruits. Scriptures tell you that if you've actually read it. And the bottom line is that if you want to make a marriage work, you both have to be in alignment. Going back to that word again, alignment. You both have to be in alignment with what your intentions are with each other. There are deceptive people. Yes. There are horrible people. Yes. There are horrible men and women. But before we could ever get to the best of anybody, we have to go through the worst. We have to. We go through the worst every day in this life trying to seek after, for those that are believers, of course, that are seekers of Yahweh or this invisible God in the cosmos, trying to understand him in multiple ways. And we find often that it's treacherous, it's complicated, it's confusing, and we don't understand why. But yet and still, every single day, despite the heartbreak, despite the loss of people in our lives, despite the shit that we go through, guess what we still have to do? We still keep seeking and seeking to our dying day because we want to better understand why we should have faith in this God. And in the same way with marriage, if you want to seek after true marriage, stop going for people who clearly don't best represent the values that you look for. And seek after partners who are willing to make sacrifices and make concessions when necessary. I don't think we have to make 100% concessions because it's still your responsibility as much as it is mine. And I'm not going to get used. I don't think men should be used. But I do think men can have conversations and sit down and say, hey, if you feel burdened, I'll help you out here. Just give me the schedules, give me whatever it is, I'll handle it. And make sure he's the guy that will be consistent. And he will be not necessarily proactive in that consistency, but he cares enough to fall in order to rise and become better in trying to understand the schedule of the child when it comes to their health, or when it comes to their schooling, or when it comes to taking them to games and things of that nature. Practice makes perfect. Perfection doesn't make practice. We have to reach those states. We have to train our minds to want to do these things. Otherwise, these are people that just don't give a shit about their marriage, or they're too lazy to do what it is that you're asking. And you have to make consciously better decisions on who you're choosing to love and who you're choosing to be with. Let's take some accountability for our own actions and our own decisions before we start immediately labeling it the extreme, i.e. slavery, as some of these women have proclaimed that it is. Marriages are naturally burdensome. That's how we learn to love one another and become increasingly better and fortifying our rapport with one another. You don't get tough by doing nothing. You get tough by actually going through the fights, through the arena, through life. These experiences help to shape you and make you better and resilient. And if you think a marriage is meant to be a cakewalk, or where you can use that one person to do everything that you want them to do and you do nothing at all, you're in the wrong field. So I'll leave it right there. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes episode 21. Have a good day or good night wherever you reside. I thank you for listening if you got this far. I hope it brought you some insight and gave you some perspective on it. That was my take on the matter. I wonder what's yours and what do you think and why? Where do you stand on the matter? Let's have a conversation about it. Comment, like, and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content that I put out. All right, people. Take care. Peace.